Wahoo McDaniel's stepson died.
Yeah, hearing about that too. Just a bizarre a water accident, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a skiing accident. He was only 17, and I'm communicating with her right now. We're going to talk, off the record, off Facebook.
Oh, sure, like old friends and stuff. Yeah, I mean,
yes, because Wahoo was a great guy. He was my tag team partner. He died in 2002.
Oh, Wahoo! That Wahoo was the first gentleman. I was speaking of just from a personal perspective. At the very first pro wrestling show I went to, being up here in Minnesota, of course, we were in AWA territory, at AWA state, and I saw it was at a high school spot show up in Roseau, Minnesota, where Wahoo McDaniel was one of the first professional wrestlers I ever met. And I was only just a young kid, probably 8, 9 years old, and I was rattling off stuff about his football and all of that, and he was so patient and so just a class act, and I never really forgot about that. It was more than just an autograph, and Wahoo had that. He had that it factor. Even as a kid, I realized just what star power Wahoo had, both from he was a hell of an athlete, but he just had that charisma too, and you know that full well working with him in the tag team ranks when you guys were doing your thing for Crockett.
The difference between, let's say, a Dusty Rhodes, there's really 4 assets to a professional wrestler. I mean, that a promoter will push. And that's if you know how to wrestle, you know how to rap, interview, and you got charisma. I mean, you got to have that charisma, But really, the body, all 4 of those go together. Dusty made it with charisma and interview alone. He didn't have the body, and he really couldn't wrestle real well, but he had that such charismatic. We're talking Wahoo McDaniel was Jim Thorpe type athletic. He held the record for the longest punt in the NFL. No one knows this until Randall Cunningham broke it with a wind-aided punt from the end zone on a snap. Remember that?
Yeah, it was a foggy day, too. You got to put that into play. Nobody could see where the damn thing was going.
Right, and nobody was back there to get it, so they just punted from the end zone. It went all the way back like a 80-yard punter, 90-yard punt or something.
Yeah.
But Wahoo was a scratch golf player, a pro football player, pro wrestler. He was a Jim Thorpe of professional wrestling, and I was lucky enough to tag up with him. Yeah, Wahoo McDaniel was the greatest Indian athlete ever, next to Jim Thorpe, they say. But I looked at both of them. I think Wahoo is the greatest Indian athlete of all time, because there's nothing he couldn't do.
Yeah, I wouldn't have wanted to.
I played him in racquetball. He was great.
I wouldn't have wanted to be on the opposite end of one of those chops, though. I mean, even I remember hearing it at that house show that night. Even though it's a younger kid, it was he went. I think he was breaking up a tag with Kurt Hennig. Was in the main event in the 6-man with Wahoo. And he went up and gave him a chop that you could hear all the way across the gymnasium. It was just echoing. It was like, man, I felt even as a kid, I was like, I winced just a little bit because Wahoo, man, he was tougher than shoe leather, man, too.
No, there's no doubt about it. And I can tell you, one night in the Bahamas, in Nassau, Bahamas, Wahoo, after we were done, sometime Wahoo, liked to drink a little bit. He got a little bit tipsy one day, and we were in the casino in the Bahamas. And there was this one dude in there who was a real smart aleck, and he was saying wrestling is fake. And back then, we really protected the business, not like Vince does now. He exposes everything. We were very protective of the business, kayfabing it very good. And so he said, well, why don't you go ahead and bare your chest and let me chop you in the chest? And the guy says, yeah, go, yourself, And well, anyway, push come to shove, he put a $100 bill up. He said he could knock him on his butt. The guy was a big guy, 6'5", maybe 240, and he was a little tipsy himself. But Wahoo shopped him. The guy would about, I'm not exaggerating when I say this, 20 feet backwards, head over heels, man. And it sounded like a gun going off when he chopped him in the chest.
Oh, man.
Now, you know that for a fact. You know how hard he chopped, the hardest of all time.
I even as a kid wrestling in the backyards, I got in trouble with many parents for kids running home crying because I was doing the Wahoo chop. I'll admit it. It was you too. You too in that full Nelson. I shouldn't have watched that World Championship Wrestling one Saturday night. I got in such trouble for lifting a cousin up in the full Nelson because he got a little mouthy and a little cross with me. Oh man, I got for all the things I got in trouble for with pro wrestling. But yeah, I loved every minute of it. And I loved you guys, you and Wahoo.